Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. We're back in session from yesterday's meeting that we recessed. It's 101. This time I'll call the meeting to order. We have Commissioner Hutchins, Monroe, Smith, and Harrison present. I'm Judge Stovall presiding over the meeting. At this time, since we did public hearings yesterday, do we have to do it again today?
If there are any new public comments, I don't have you received anything?
Nobody's got public comments? Okay.
No.
All right, so we'll move on to new business. Daniel, you want to address the...
Yes, this is item B4. So just for the folks online who may be tuning in, yesterday afternoon, the Commissioners Court recessed that meeting and called to reconvene today at 1 o'clock here. So this is a continuation of the meeting yesterday. The thing that's on the agenda is the resolution consenting to the legislative creation of an MDD. The general reason for recessing was because there were still negotiations going on between the attorneys for the city and the county and the attorneys for the developer. Those are still going on in the meeting yesterday. In fact, went throughout the day and then into last night to the point where it came down to me and the developer's attorney finalizing things at about 6:30 last night while the city council meeting was going on. The long and short of that is that the developer has agreed to all of the changes that were suggested by the county's and the city's lawyer, Julie Fort. The version that I sent to the commissioners earlier today. I think I sent it last night and then also another version or another copy of it earlier today with the entire resolution attached along with all the meets and bounds descriptions and the map. That is the version that it would be appropriate for the commissioners to vote on today. And so the city has approved it. The resolution that I sent earlier today is the same as the one that was that we were talking about yesterday, except that I changed the date to be today's date. If you approve it, this will go then to the developers, lobbyists who are going to talk with our senator and our representative. And by the way, just so we're on the same page on this, that they have not been, apparently before I talked to them last Tuesday when we were at Hunt County Days, nobody had talked to them about this. In fact, I just got a text from Brent a few minutes ago asking what the deal was with it, because other than my conversation with him, nobody talked to him about it. And so my understanding from last night from talking to the developer's attorney is that if the county, well, no matter what the county does, but they're going to take at least the city's consent and potentially, if you'll vote for this, the county's consent, get that to their lobbyist. The lobbyist is then going to go talk to our House rep and senator, or potentially their chiefs of staff or their legislative people to try to get them both to file this by the deadline, which is day after tomorrow, in the form that will be attached to the resolution. So I don't know how all that's going to work. I'm not super up on that part of the legislative process. But what you have in front of you is slightly different in a positive way from the version that we were talking about yesterday. And it's different because the developers agreed to all the terms set out by the attorney. So I can talk, answer any questions about that or go over any of the details that you'd like to go over as part of that discussion.
Commissioners, anybody got a question?
So what happens, or is there any likelihood that it will not get filed Friday?
Well, there's at least some, especially when our House rep texted me and said he doesn't know what, nobody's talked to him about it. I suspect that after this meeting, they're going to be moving real quickly to get that to those people, the right people down in Austin, so that it can be filed. I mean, the process for them is not complicated. It's quick and straightforward. It's just a filing deadline that's this Friday.
So hypothetically, if they don't get it filed, then what happens from there?
Well, if it doesn't get filed, it's super unlikely that it would move forward this session because that rule is not a black and white bar to this type of legislation, but it effectively is. Because my understanding is 4/5 of both houses, the House and the Senate, have to vote to suspend the rule, that specific rule for this specific bill. And that has happened historically when there's been an emergency issue. But this is about as far from an emergency as you can get. And so the likelihood is that it just wouldn't get heard this session, and because they're pushing to get this done, start construction way before 2.5 years from now for September of 2027, they would likely just go a different direction. And, I mean, they haven't made it super clear to me what direction that would be, but it would be a different type of district, one that can be established through election rather than legislatively, like a MUD.
But you said it yesterday, but again, as we understand it, it's not if this development is coming.
Oh, there's zero question about that. This isn't a property that's under contract based on speculation, and they're trying to get a development agreement and then decide if they're going to buy the property, which is about 90% of the economic incentive agreements that we deal with are on spec. This is not. This is a company that has, a bunch of other similar things that they've done in Texas, and they've bought the property up slowly so that they can, apparently so they can pay the, still lower prices for real estate in that area. But they already own, 2,000 acres and are trying to buy a whole lot more. The stuff that they're trying to buy wouldn't be part of this agreement. It would just have to be added later on, which that would come in under the general rules for MMDs or under the development agreement, which is something that they'd have to do, a development agreement that lays out all the specific rules about what property can be added and what the procedure is to add that property. That was one of the kind of the issues of contention that they agreed to go with our language on that.
Okay. And all we're voting on is just to support this development for legislation.
You're consenting to the approval of it, and the consent resolution is important because it basically says at the top, there's a section 1, and part of the language in here might not seem, it might not really jump out as an important thing just when you're reading through, because it seems like the boilerplate that we have in a lot of these resolutions. But there's a part that says that the Commissioners Court gives conditional support to the creation of this, but the underlined part right there in the middle, subject to a development agreement executed by the City of Greenville, that is the only way that it would have the ultimate powers that it's seeking, which really boils down to borrowing power, because that power is subject to review of the Attorney General's office, and this form is what's used, this procedure basically, is what's used to create the building blocks for the AG to be able to look over and see that they do have actual authority to do this. So if, that could go a couple of different directions. Number one, if you approve this and it's filed in the legislature and it passes the House and the Senate, signed by the governor, and becomes law, then we have, it'll be effective on September 1st. And we have until September 1st, 2027, exactly 2 years to draft and have everybody approve the development agreement. If that doesn't happen, then they don't have the powers that this legislation gives them, and they can't go borrow money. Because all of those bonds have to be approved by the AG's office because they're tied to the value of land. And the city's version of this and the county's version both have that same language to ensure that this isn't some animal that you create and then just gallops off doing their own damage without having some level of government oversight and approval for the big swings, but specifically borrowing money that can be charged as an assessment against the future property owners.
You said development agreement, is that something that goes before the city and us as well?
Well, it would be, no, probably not. It would probably just be with the city. That's the way that this is all drafted, and trying to add something in. Actually, I think I had the same exact question from Mark yesterday, or something similar, about whether that would also be subject to the county. It's not currently. If we try to add that, it would be changing the template that the Legislative Council says is what we need to use, otherwise they're just going to reject it. But especially in the current atmosphere, political atmosphere of the legislature being very much against government power grabs, as they would call that, that's a reasonable thing to ask for. And a few sessions ago, I think putting that in probably would have passed muster. It won't now. And so you're kind of left with this, choice to voluntarily not grab that level of power, or potentially, the potential outcome of that, if you try, could be a much worse result in the form of a mud over which no local government would have power.
Because that's really the point, right? We signed this, it's about getting the MMD as opposed to we don't, or it's delayed, that we end up with a mud. That's really the benefit to us, right, in getting this done at the end of the day.
That's, that's the main benefit, and that can go a bunch of different directions, because it doesn't have to be a mud. It could be one of the other two types of districts, but it would come along with less power, not necessarily for the county, but for the city, which is going to be providing those services anyway. That's right.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Entertain a motion for approval of the resolution consenting to legislative creation of Wolf Creek Municipal Management District.
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
Got a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything else today?
No. Not for me.
All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Got a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 1:14.